He wanted me to wear his shirts and ties. I said no. He said I didn't love him. Now we're living separately, and in court he claimed I wasn't accepting his identity. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am at 2 a.m., sitting in my tiny studio apartment that smells like leftover takeout and regret. 6 months ago, I was married and living in what I thought was my dream house. Tonight, I'm wondering how wanting to wear my own clothes became grounds for divorce. Started small like these things always do. We'd been married for about 3 months when he began making comments about my outfits. Not mean comments, just suggestions. He'd see me getting ready for work in my usual blouse and skirt combo and say something like, "Wouldn't it be cute if we matched today?" First I thought it was sweet. Newlywed stuff, you know? I'd throw on a blue shirt if he was wearing blue, or switch to black pants if that's what he had on. The requests became more frequent. Every morning became a negotiation about what I was wearing. He'd lay out clothes for me the night before, always items that somehow coordinated with his planned outfit. When I'd protest that I had my own clothes picked out, he'd get this hurt look in his eyes and say he just wanted us to look like a team. By month 4, he wasn't just suggesting colors anymore. He wanted me to wear his actual clothes. His button-down shirts, his ties, his blazers. The first time he seriously proposed this, I laughed because I thought he was joking. His shirts hung on me like tents, and his ties looked ridiculous with my figure. But he wasn't laughing. He stood there in our bedroom, holding out one of his navy blazers, explaining how we'd look so sophisticated walking into places together, like a power couple who really understood each other. I tried to compromise. I bought clothes in similar styles to his, thinking that would satisfy whatever this was. I got myself some blazers, some button-downs, even a few ties that were actually designed for women. But it wasn't enough. He wanted me in his exact clothes, wearing his cologne, carrying a briefcase like his. The cologne thing was particularly weird because it was this heavy masculine scent that gave me headaches. But he'd spray it on my wrists every morning before work, saying it would make him think of me during the day. The breaking point came on a Saturday in our 6th month of marriage. We were getting ready to go to his company picnic, and he'd laid out an entire outfit for me. His khaki pants, his polo shirt, his baseball cap, even his sneakers. The pants were so big I'd need a belt to keep them up, and the sneakers were 2 sizes too large. I stood there looking at this ridiculous ensemble, and something inside me just snapped. I told him I wasn't going to wear his clothes anymore. Not today, not ever. I had my own style, my own identity, and I wasn't going to disappear into his closet. The fight that followed was unlike anything we'd ever had. He accused me of not loving him enough to make this small sacrifice. Small sacrifice? I'd been losing myself piece by piece for months, and he called it small. He said couples who truly love each other want to be like each other, want to share everything, including their appearance. He brought up how his parents had always dressed similarly, how his grandparents had worn matching outfits to church every Sunday. This was what real love looked like, he said. This was commitment. I tried to explain that I could love him without becoming his clone. That my wearing my own clothes didn't mean I rejected him as a person. But he couldn't hear it. To him, my refusal was a fundamental rejection of who he was. If I truly accepted him, I'd want to be like him in every way possible. The picnic was a disaster. I wore my own sundress and sandals, and he showed up in his polo and khakis, looking miserable. He barely spoke to me the entire day, and when his coworkers complimented my dress, I could see him getting more and more agitated. On the drive home, he said maybe we needed to think about whether we were really compatible. Things spiraled quickly after that. He started sleeping in the guest room, saying he needed space to think about our relationship. He'd make passive-aggressive comments about my outfits, wondering aloud why I couldn't just try harder to understand his needs. He started going out with friends more often, leaving me alone in our big house with its perfectly coordinated throw pillows and matching everything. The divorce papers came 2 weeks later. I wasn't entirely surprised, but seeing it in writing still felt like a punch to the gut. The paperwork cited irreconcilable differences, but when he moved out, he made sure to tell me exactly what those differences were. I didn't support his identity. I didn't understand what it meant to be a true partner. I was too selfish to make simple compromises. The court proceedings were surreal. Here we were, 2 adults arguing about clothes in front of a judge. His lawyer painted me as unreasonable and unsupportive, someone who couldn't make basic sacrifices for her marriage. My lawyer tried to frame it as controlling behavior, but honestly it sounded crazy even to me. Who gets divorced over matching outfits? Update 1 to 3 weeks later. The weirdest thing happened yesterday, and I'm still processing it. My soon-to-be ex-husband showed up at my apartment unannounced. I almost didn't recognize him at first because he was dressed completely differently. Gone were the sharp blazers and perfectly pressed shirts. Instead, he was wearing ripped jeans, a vintage band t-shirt, and sneakers that looked like they'd been through a war. He wanted to talk, he said, to explain some things. We sat in my tiny living room, and for the first time in months he actually looked relaxed. Turns out the whole matching clothes thing wasn't really about me at all. It was about his mother. His mom had always dressed him and his father identically for family photos, church, social events, everything. She'd buy them matching sweaters for Christmas, matching ties for Easter, matching pajamas for holiday mornings. His dad went along with it without complaint, and his mom would gush about how handsome her boys looked, how put together their family appeared. When we got married, he felt pressure to recreate that dynamic. In his mind, that's what successful couples did. They presented a united front, literally. He thought I'd want that too, that I'd find it romantic and bonding. When I resisted, it triggered something deep in him about what marriage was supposed to look like. The irony is that he never even liked dressing that way. Those blazers and button-downs? They were his mom's choices that he'd never questioned. The cologne I hated? She'd been buying it for him since high school. Even after we separated, he kept dressing the same way out of habit until his roommate finally asked why he always looked like he was heading to a business meeting at the grocery store. He apologized. Really genuinely apologized. He said he'd been so focused on creating what he thought marriage should look like that he'd forgotten to pay attention to what our marriage actually was. He'd been trying to fit us into his mother's template, instead of letting us figure out our own way of being together. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was relieved to finally understand where all this had come from. Part of me was angry that it had taken a divorce for him to figure this out. And part of me was just tired. So tired of analyzing every interaction, every argument, every moment of our relationship. He asked if we could try again. Start over. Maybe date each other properly this time without the pressure of living up to anyone else's expectations. The divorce papers were already filed, but they hadn't been finalized yet. We could stop the process, go to counseling, figure out how to be ourselves together instead of some idealized version of a couple. I told him I needed time to think. Because here's the thing, even though I understand now where his behavior came from, I can't forget how it felt to have my identity slowly erased. I can't forget the morning I looked in the mirror wearing his clothes and didn't recognize myself. I can't forget how small I felt when he made it clear that loving him meant disappearing into him. Understanding someone's motivations doesn't automatically heal the hurt they caused. I spent months questioning my own worth, wondering if I was being unreasonable, if I was a bad wife for wanting to wear my own clothes. That damage doesn't just go away because he had an epiphany about his mom. But I'd be lying if I said part of me wasn't curious about who we could be together if we started fresh. The man sitting in my living room yesterday felt like someone I'd never met before. Relaxed, genuine, willing to be vulnerable. Maybe that's who he really was underneath all those perfectly pressed shirts and matching accessories. I'm supposed to give him an answer by the end of the week. 5 days to decide whether to stop a divorce and try to rebuild something that might have been broken from the start, or to move forward with ending something that might have just been built on the wrong foundation. Update 2 to 2 months later. I decided to give it another shot. I know, I can already hear the comments telling me I'm making a mistake, that people don't really change, that I'm setting myself up for disappointment. Maybe you're right. But I needed to know for myself whether what we'd had was worth saving, or if we were just two people who'd gotten married for the wrong reasons. We didn't jump back into living together right away. Instead, we dated. Actual dating like we should have done before we got engaged in the first place. Coffee dates where we talked about books instead of what we were wearing. Movie nights where he didn't comment on my outfit once. Dinners where we split the check and argued about politics and laughed until my sides hurt. It was strange getting to know the person I'd married. Turns out he was actually pretty funny when he wasn't worried about maintaining some perfect image. He had opinions about things I never knew he cared about. He made terrible dad jokes and knew way too much about obscure historical events and could cook exactly one dish really well, homemade pasta that was actually incredible. The clothes thing came up a few times, but differently than before. He'd catch himself suggesting we coordinate outfits and then immediately apologize. Old habits, he'd say. We talked about it openly now, about how his mom's expectations had shaped his idea of relationships, about how my need for independence had been intensified by feeling controlled. 3 weeks into our dating experiment, something shifted. I was getting ready for one of our dinners, trying on different outfits when I realized I was subconsciously picking things I thought he'd like. Not because I felt pressured to, but because I wanted to. There's a difference between being forced to consider someone else's preferences and choosing to consider them because you care about their happiness. I ended up wearing a blue sweater because I remembered him mentioning once that blue was his favorite color. Not his blue sweater, not a sweater that matched his exactly, just a blue sweater that I liked and felt good in. When he picked me up and smiled really big when he saw me, I felt something I hadn't felt in our entire marriage, like I was making him happy by being myself, not by becoming someone else. We had the conversation about stopping the divorce proceedings a month ago. It wasn't romantic or dramatic. We were sitting in his car after a particularly good date, and he asked if I thought we were ready to try being married again. Really married this time, he said. To each other, not to some idea of what marriage should look like. I said yes, but with conditions. We were going to take it slow. We were going to keep talking about things instead of making assumptions. We were going to pay attention to who we actually were instead of who we thought we should be. And if either of us started trying to change the other person again, we were going to call it quits for real this time. The divorce papers got withdrawn last week. We're not moving back in together yet. I'm keeping my apartment for now, and he's staying with his roommate. We're planning a small ceremony for just us. A do-over wedding where we can make promises we actually understand this time. My friends think I'm crazy. His friends think he's lucky I gave him another chance. My sister keeps asking if I'm sure he's really changed, or if I'm just seeing what I want to see. Honestly, I don't know. People can change, but they can also revert back to old patterns when stress hits or when life gets complicated. What I do know is that the person I've been dating for the past 2 months is someone I actually like spending time with. Someone who makes me laugh and challenges me to think about things differently and remembers that I hate mushrooms on pizza. Someone who wears whatever he wants and doesn't care if it matches what I'm wearing. Maybe it won't work out. Maybe we'll fall back into old patterns or discover new incompatibilities, or just realize we're better as friends than as spouses. But for the first time since we got married, I feel like we're at least trying to figure out how to be together as ourselves instead of as some costume party version of a couple. Final update 6 months later. We did it. We got remarried last month in my parents' backyard with just immediate family present. I wore a yellow sundress that I picked out myself, and he wore a gray suit that actually fit his personality. No matching accessories, no coordinated color schemes, just 2 people who decided they wanted to try being married to each other instead of to their expectations. The past few months haven't been perfect. We've had arguments about money and whose turn it is to do dishes and whether we should get a cat. Normal couple stuff. The difference is that now when we fight, it's about actual issues, not about whether I'm supporting his identity by wearing his cologne. We moved in together 2 months ago, to a new place that neither of us had lived in before. We decorated it together and, surprisingly, our styles actually complement each other pretty well when we're not trying to make them identical. He likes clean lines and neutral colors. I like plants and textured fabrics. Our living room has both, and it actually looks pretty great. The clothes thing still comes up occasionally, but in funny ways now. Sometimes he'll put on a shirt and I'll realize I have one in a similar color, and we'll joke about accidentally matching. Sometimes I'll borrow his hoodie because it's comfortable, and he'll pretend to be offended that I'm stealing his look. It's become something we can laugh about instead of something that makes us question our entire relationship. His mom took a while to adjust to the new dynamic. She kept buying us matching Christmas sweaters and seemed confused when we'd wear them on different days instead of at the same time. But she's slowly getting used to the idea that we can be a united couple, without looking like we raided each other's closets. I think what I learned from all this is that love isn't about becoming the same person. It's about becoming better versions of yourselves together. For a while there, we were both so focused on looking like we belonged together that we forgot to actually belong together. Do I regret the whole mess? Not really. Going through that experience taught me things about myself I might never have learned otherwise. I learned that I need to feel like myself in a relationship, that compromise doesn't mean erasure, and that sometimes the worst fights lead to the most important conversations. It also taught me that people really can change when they want to badly enough. Not completely. He's still the kind of person who organizes his closet by color, and I'm still the kind of person who throws clean laundry in a pile until I need something. But we've both learned how to be who we are while also being part of something together. We're talking about maybe starting a family soon. Nothing concrete yet, just conversations about what kind of parents we'd want to be, what kind of home we'd want to create. I have a feeling our kids will grow up in a house where it's okay to wear whatever makes you feel like yourself, even if it doesn't match anyone else. Sometimes at night, when we're both reading in bed wearing completely different pajamas, I think about how close we came to losing this. How I almost let the worst version of our relationship define what we could be together. I'm glad we gave each other another chance. I'm glad we learned how to love each other without losing ourselves. Not every story like this has a happy ending. I know that. Sometimes when someone tries to control how you express yourself, it's a sign of deeper problems that won't get fixed with a heartfelt conversation and some self-reflection. But sometimes it's just two people who got confused about what love was supposed to look like and needed to figure out what it actually felt like instead. For us, it feels like Sunday mornings where we drink coffee in our mismatched mugs and argue about crossword puzzle answers. It feels like him bringing me flowers because he saw them and thought I'd like them, not because it's an anniversary or holiday. It feels like wearing his t-shirt to bed because it's comfortable, not because he asked me to. Feels like being ourselves together. Finally,